Good evening, everyone, and welcome to EduTALK. EduTALK is a weekly virtual talk show created out of the need for a global learning community focused on topics in education that directly impact Caribbean nations as well as the diaspora, um, nationals working across the globe. EduTalk features teachers, principals, administrators, business leaders, and dignitaries who share their expertise on critical topics facing education today with a common goal of moving education forward and our students upward. I am your host. I'm Dr. Dwayne Dice. I'm the founder and CEO of Education Solutions International, Inc. Please visit educationsolutionsinternational.org and please subscribe. Also tune in to our website, our mailing list, and also our communication, and you will receive a bunch of information for conferences, as well as talks, as well as forums that we have in our network and workshops that you can become a part of. Okay, we are here with our special guest this evening, and he's none other than Mr. Alvin Irby. He is the founder. He's the founder of Barbershop Books. He's also he calls himself the chief reading inspirer. I love that word, inspire, of Barbershop Books. Welcome to EduTalk, Alvin. It's so good to see you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yes, it's speaking of it's wonderful to have you on EduTalk. I was going through Barbershop Books website and see that you have a lot of resources, and you're touching thousands of lives, with all of that. So you're a man on a mission, and a man that is on the mission to create change in almost every student life right across America and across the globe. So you start in your corner. How do you do it?
How do I do it?
Yes.
Prayer. No. You know, one day at a time, I guess is how I do it. I often think a lot about the time that I spent in the classroom. I was a kindergarten teacher, I was a first grade teacher, I was a fourth grade teacher. And, I think about the amazing moments, learning moments that happened in the classroom and the growth that I saw in my students. And then I look at some of these, often depressing statistics about, Black boys and how, many of them are struggling at reading. And I just really work with my team and with pretty much anyone who will listen to try and kind of inspire a love of reading and really just to cultivate the reading identity of children. I think that's really, why I do it and is to see that spark, of children identifying as readers.
Yeah, yeah. I level with you with that because I'm an educator as well, in the school in the daytime, and I tell you, I share your sentiments when it comes on to encouraging students, especially students of color, to make sure that they are taking in as much as possible what we call education, and sometimes they're not getting it, or communication is not going being clear to them, especially in reading. So before we're going to talk about Barbershop Books in detail and the initiatives that you have surrounding that. Tell us a little bit about you, though. You, Alvin Irby, who exactly are you? If somebody asks you, who is this guy? I see he's doing a lot of work around reading and students and so on. And he's a man. He's not a female teacher, running around out there getting students to read, which is the traditional way of, come on, kids, let's sit and read, from a female perspective. But what drew me really close to Barbershop Books so much so as an admirer is the fact that it's run by a male, created and being organized by you, the founder. So who is Alvin?
Who is Alvin? That's an excellent question. I was born and raised in Little Rock, Arkansas, so in the southern part of the United States, in the South. My mom was an elementary school teacher for more than 30 years. She retired from the Little Rock School District in Little Rock, Arkansas. And so, I often say that, before I even made it to high school, I knew how to put up a bulletin board because my mom, she got free labor from me and my siblings when we would go to school and kind of, help her put together her classroom. And my mom was very passionate about teaching and about learning. And, I never thought I would become a teacher. But, when I look back, I definitely believe that, she played a very critical role in my decision, to become an educator, and all the things that I saw her do to inspire her kids to learn and grow, I think, definitely rubbed off on me. Yeah. What else? Who am I? I mean, I am also a stand-up comedian, so there's definitely this kind of teacher and education tradition. Growing up in a small city in the South, not known necessarily for entertainment, I never thought I would become a professional comedian, someone people would pay to tell jokes. But I was always funny, from a very young age. I was I made people laugh. But, I think, a lot of times it was often interpreted as a class clown. That's, I think often a lot of comedians, if they go back to their school years, they often got described in that way. I think that what's beautiful about teaching is that, in many ways, if the teachers who do it well, they are in many ways an entertainer. They're thinking of, how do I make this relevant for this audience? How do I make this engaging for this audience? There's often a call and response, right? I tell a joke, you laugh. In the case of learning, it's like you put some information out there and then you look for signs. It may not be laughed, or sometimes it is, but in many ways, it's some other form of like them showing you that what you're saying is resonating or not with them. And then, sometimes you tell a joke that isn't funny and you have to go back to the drawing board the same way you put a lesson out there, and the kids just kind of look at you. And so, I tell people all the time that, stand-up comedy actually taught me the most about, culturally relevant communication. It wasn't professional development from teaching, but it was me standing in front of a room of people from around the world or from different places around the country and trying to get them all to laugh at the same joke at the same time. And I think about teaching in many ways exactly like that. You have all these little minds, they're all different. What you're trying to get them all to learn this one thing, at the same time. The last thing I would say about who am I, when I was 7, my mom taught me to crochet. And I know that is not something that, this was not something that boys did in Little Rock, Arkansas, or really many places anywhere really around the world. But she taught me to crochet and I was good at it. Like, I really was good at it. And I liked doing it. And, it really changed my life. And the reason why I say crocheting changed my life is because I think at a very young age, it taught me not, if there was something that I was good at or that I enjoyed doing, crocheting taught me not to care enough about what other people thought to stop doing it. That didn't mean I didn't care what other people thought,
Yeah.
but not to care enough about what other people thought to stop doing it. And I think that as leadership opportunities and other types of opportunities to try new things or to go to new places, I think that that kind of willingness to try something new or to take a risk that I kind of developed as a kid crocheting, it really kind of transferred over to other areas of my life. And I think has kind of, inspired me as I've kind of just progressed through adulthood to not be willing to make a mistake or to try something different.
Wow. Okay. So you say you mentioned your mom as
Yeah.
a really great influence on you, and then the skills that you learn outside of the classroom that caused you to be in the classroom and influencing. That's really powerful. Where I'm hoping that viewers will look on this and think that it's not a narrow way of living that counts, where you think of one career or you think of one thing that you want to do and you beat that thing all the way to your older years, just one thing, but you can be involved in so many different things and be this one person who takes on many different hats and wear them the same way that everything else could happen equally. And you are a person. Um, where does the influence come from to start? You actually become an entrepreneur, or a philanthropy type of person. Where does
Um,
that come from?
I I've been an entrepreneur since I was a kid. I don't know that I ever used that word to describe myself, but I didn't really get, an allowance or anything like that, growing up. Of course, every now, my mom would give me a little money here or there, but, and so if I wanted candy money or spending money, I had to figure out ways to generate money for myself. And so when I was a kid, I would rake leaves, I would wash people's cars. When I was in middle school, I sold candy.
Mhm.
By the time I made it to high school, every summer I had some type of job, normally a summer camp type of job, where I would try and save my money to buy new clothes or to do different things. And so, I would say that from a very young age, out of necessity, I kind of, was an entrepreneur. And then, I think that as I grew up and opportunities presented themselves for me to kind of, you know, uh, take on more kind of leadership or business types of opportunities, you know, I wasn't afraid, and it doesn't mean I knew everything.
Right.
It does not mean, I think that one of the most powerful things I think I would say, being an entrepreneur, that I've learned is how important it is to have a mindset, a growth mindset,
Mhm.
and to identify as a learner. Like when I first created Barbershop Books, I created the first website. It looked a hot mess. It looked
Yeah, yeah,
horrible, right?
yes.
But I didn't have the money,
Yeah, yeah.
and I thought it was a good idea to create this organization. And so I didn't let the fact that I wasn't a web designer kind of stop me from
Mm-hmm.
taking a stab at it.
Yeah.
Just like I'd never run an organization, I didn't let that stop me from
Mm-hmm.
kind of creating something. But I also didn't just say that just because I did this, that it's right or
Mm-hmm.
that there's no reason for me to continue learning. And so I think, I tell entrepreneurs all the time, like when you're creating something new or different, like do your due diligence and
Mm-hmm.
come up with a good name. Barbershop Books was not the original name of the organization. It
Oh,
was
wow.
Reading Holiday Project. And I
Wow.
had this long, drawn out story about how I was in London doing an internship. And, I found out that most of the kids who were skipping school, or in London, they said bonking off, right? They were skipping school because they were going on unauthorized holidays. So I said, well,
Yeah.
I want kids to take a break to read a book. And I decided I was going to name the organization Reading Holiday Project. I started putting books in barbershops. Then I read some marketing and branding books.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, well, this is a horrible name. This is a horrible name for what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And I gotta go, I gotta figure something out. And I actually did a little exercise to try and, come up that I use from stand up to try and come
Yeah.
up with a new name.
Yeah.
And that's when I came up with Barbershop Books. And, it's so important when you're, creating something new to really bounce ideas off of people
Mm-hmm.
that you trust and off of smart people, not
Yes. Yeah.
just people who are going to just nod and say, oh,
Yeah.
yes, baby, that's good,
Yeah.
baby,
Yeah.
but people who are going to, really give you some critical feedback and hopefully help you avoid,
Yeah. That's very
those
true.
mistakes.
Yeah. Yeah. It's very true that you talk about people too, that you run your ideas among them because they are in touch with a lot of different aspects of society, and they can tell you what will work and what will not work. And then there's a word too that I was reading in an article recently, that in order to make a difference in life, one of the components of it is that you need to be coachable, you know? So allowing yourself to take advice from people who are among us and living with us, it's so important. And it talks about humility too, inside of us, that we bring out as a quality that other people would love to emulate among us. So the 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 name Barbershop Books actually came after so much reflection and sharing among people. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
did you have any drawbacks though when you think of Barbershop Books and you're trying to think about putting this thing in the space of barbershops? Because that's tell us what happened with that rolling out into what do I do with this now? Do I go and talk to people, the
So
barbers and so on?
I had the idea for Barbershop Books way before I actually created the organization. I was
Oh,
teaching first grade in the Bronx, and
yeah.
there was a barber shop across the street from my school. And so one day, I'm getting a haircut in the barber shop across the street from the school, which is something, when and wherever possible, when I was teaching, I always tried to do things in the community where my school was,
Yes.
and that was important to me.
Yeah, yeah.
And so I'm getting a haircut, and one of my first grade students comes into the barber shop. He plops down on the couch. He starts looking out the window, kind of bored. He starts getting antsy, and his mom is like, "Sit down." And the whole time I'm looking at this, all I'm thinking is, he should be practicing his reading right now.
Yeah.
I knew his reading level. I was his teacher. And I was like, I wish I had a children's book to give him, but I didn't. And
Oh,
so it was this kind of chance encounter with one of my first grade students that really kind of sparked this idea. But I was like a first year teacher.
mhm.
And I'd never run an organization. I didn't really know anything about nonprofit organizations. And so I ended up just kind of writing down a little paragraph and like emailing it to myself or saving it in Google Drive or
Yeah,
something.
yeah.
But, and I think I got into that habit from doing stand up where I would jot down funny ideas or jokes.
Mhm.
And so then I started applying it to non-comedy types of stuff, which are just general ideas. And I think that, when you look at creatives, no matter what domain they work in, if they're an engineer, they're a musician, they're an inventor, they're a philosopher, whoever it is,
Mhm.
when you look throughout history, oftentimes you'll see people documenting their ideas, writing it down with a quill, right? When they used to have to dip it by the
Yeah. Yep.
candlelight, or jotting ideas or song lyrics on napkins. And, when I think back to this idea for Barbershop Books, I wonder, what if I wouldn't have gone home and written the idea down? I tell entrepreneurs when I have an opportunity to speak to young people,
Yeah.
don't be arrogant and think that your idea is so good, so amazing, so, whatever, that you would never forget it.
Yeah.
Respect your ideas enough.
Yes.
Respect the muse enough
Mhm.
to write it down.
Yes. Yes. That is very true. Very, very true. I won't even repeat because your voice, I want it to stay there with it. It's true. It's very, very true. You need to respect it. How long now have you created it, or when did you create?
So this was, what was that? That was like 2008, 2009, when I was a first grade teacher.
Mhm.
Fast forward to 2013.
Mhm. Wow.
So I didn't found the organization until 2013. So it just sat in my Google Drive or wherever it was, collecting digital dust for years. The idea, but during that time, I taught in multiple grades. I
Yeah.
became an education director at the Boys Club of New York. There are a lot of experience that in many ways I think were kind of preparing me
Mhm.
for the work, that I do now. But the way that it started, once I decided, that I really wanted to do this program, and there was one experience that really sticks out for me when I was like, you know what, I gotta do this. I
Yeah.
gotta go do that idea that I had. So when I was an education director at the Boys Club of New York, I organized the Scholastic Book Fair.
Yeah. Yeah.
So at a lot of elementary schools, a certain time of the year they have these huge metal, I don't know what you call them, but these huge metal crate things,
Mhm.
and it just, you open them and it just has books. And so I organized these book fairs, and I broke all the records that the Boys Club had, because I would like take the large colorful rugs out of the classrooms during the book fair, sit
Mhm.
them on the in the book fair. I brought the sports themed bean bags,
Yeah.
right, out of the library and put them in the book fair. And I told kids, even if you don't have money, you can just come and get your Barnes and Noble on. You can just sit there and read the books. And then I got middle and high school students to volunteer in the book fair, and I told them, if you volunteer to help kids and parents choose books,
Mhm.
I'll give you any two books you want at the end of the book fair. And my Spanish was just I. It was just I. But
Yeah.
some
Yeah.
of the students were fluent, and
Yeah.
so they could help some of the parents who only spoke Spanish. And it would be a lot more difficult for the parents to resist a middle or high school kid who's talking to them about reading than it might be for them to resist me. So,
Yeah.
but here's what happened. So I would see boys, because the Boys Club of New York is one of the oldest nonprofits, in New York City, and they only serve boys.
Mhm.
And so, as the education director, I oversaw summer and after school education programs in East Harlem at the Boys Club in East Harlem. And so I would see boys who, they found a book they really loved. And
Mhm.
I would see them walk up to a parent and say, I want this book. I want this book. And I saw parents grab the book, turn it over, $8, find a cheaper book.
Oh.
And I would just see all the joy and excitement just drain from these boys' faces. And I
Mhm.
sat there thinking, now look, there are all these people out here who think boys don't want to read. Black boys, Latino
Yep.
boys,
Yep.
all these, they just don't
Yep.
want to read the whack books that some adults are trying to force on
Or
them.
yep.
And
Yep.
so when I saw that
Mhm.
over and over again, I said, you know what? that Barbershop Books idea I had about putting books in barbershops, I need to bring the books that boys want to read, the ones that I'm seeing them so excited about during this book fair and when I was a classroom teacher, and I need to bring those books to them in a place that they're going to feel comfortable in and maybe would have their guard down and be more open to trying something new like the barbershop.
Yes, yes, that is very true. Because and it'll pick up on one of your point there with forcing the books that we think that they want to read on them, they will never read those books. And the discouragement that they get from that, it seems like it's like a stake in their heart they think of reading. They'll be like,
It's
oh God,
trauma.
yeah,
I call it reading trauma. And
yep,
when we provide a training to barbers, right? An
yes,
early literacy training, and we talk about this because we don't want barbers to be under any illusions that just because they have this colorful bookshelf with these fun books that automatically every boy who walks through the door is just gonna magically
magically,
want to
yeah,
read.
yeah,
I explain to them, and this is the way that I explain it to them. I ask the barbers, do you know a kid who's been bitten by a dog? And the barbers will raise their hand, some of them, and I'll say, well, guess what? If a kid has been bitten by a dog, they really don't care how cute you say your dog is.
yeah,
They don't care how nice,
mm-hmm,
and friendly you say your dog is. Many children, the idea of a dog, the sight of a dog strikes fear into their heart.
yeah,
Just seeing a picture of a
yes,
dog could
yes,
create anxiety. And I said, well, for some children who are convinced that they're not smart, that they're not a reader, or that they don't like to read, or who have been punished with reading, for some of those children, the mere sight of a book creates a similar level of anxiety for them. And
yeah,
so, it's important that you realize that, we're not trying to force kids to read. We're really just trying to, create a positive reading environment and to provide them with reading models, reading
yeah,
role
yeah,
models.
yeah, yeah, definitely. Definitely. I like the fact that you said that because people might be thinking that you're forcing books on kids and so on. So tell us about how does it work with the barbershop? We go in, what does the setting look like and the ambience and the encouragement? And you mentioned about literacy training for barbers. So how does it work?
So there are two main ways that Barbershop Books makes it into a barbershop. So it's usually an individual, like a grandmother who's like, I want to put these books in my grandbaby barbershop,
Yeah, yeah.
right? And then she sends Barbershop Books, a kind of donation as for the program fee. And then we ship a curated list of books, a colorful kid-sized bookshelf, um, to that barbershop, and then we provide the barbershop owner and the barbers with access to an early literacy training video that they can watch in between haircuts or on their own time that will give them just some basic tips and strategies. Barbershop Books is not trying to turn barbers into tutors. That's not
Oh,
our
okay,
goal.
okay,
Our
okay.
goal is really to equip barbers with basic early literacy development concepts, and tips for engaging families and children about reading, and also just kind of countering, like for a lot of adults, they're like, you gonna read, and they out of a good place are trying to
Yeah,
be like, you need to read,
yeah,
without realizing that can help in some cases actually make children less motivated to read. And I think that, to some extent, because, there are children who were forced to read as kids. And then as they grew up, they developed a love for reading. And so I don't want to say that, no parent should say, you shouldn't sit down and read. That's not what I'm saying at all. I just think that, there are absolutely things that can be done to make reading relevant, make it engaging, and make it fun for children. And so, that's really a lot of what we, focus on at Barbershop Books. And really, the way that I like to describe it is we try and design the program based on the reality and not the ideal. And the ideal is that a barber would initiate a conversation with a child or a family about reading, or ideally a parent would initiate a reading experience with a child, but that's not the reality. That's just not the reality. Not every parent who has a young child, even though they're sitting next to the bookshelf, will read with or to their child. That sometimes parents just come in the barbershop and look at their cell phone.
Yeah.
So when I say we design to the reality, we use a bookshelf that's kid size, meaning a kid independently, a child, a boy, a girl, whoever, can independently walk over to the bookshelf and choose books themselves.
Yeah.
It's colorful. It shows the book covers. So it's designed to kind of attract them,
Yeah. Well, were you ever thinking about, that now that we are overrun by technology, and technology is everywhere, the devices. And we spend a lot of time on the technology devices, a lot. Were you ever thinking that you're putting the paper books on a shelf in the barbershop because the kids are spending too much time on the technology? So were you thinking about that, or you're thinking, give them an app also?
Well, I think the pandemic forced Barbershop Books and everyone else to think about how you could, any nonprofits that were providing, products and services in person. I think the pandemic, forced a lot of nonprofits to think about, is there some way that our organization can pursue our mission virtually or through some type of digital content?
Right.
And we have during the pandemic developed some new digital resources and content that didn't exist prior to the pandemic. But us using children's books, physical books in the barbershop, was less about us trying to kind of combat the use of cell phones, and it was more about just carving out a kind of kid-friendly reading space in the barbershop. And children do like physical books. They do like turning pages. If the books are books that they find relevant and engaging. When I first had the idea of putting books in barbershops, I actually had a stack of books for both children and adults that I took around to barbershops, and I would sit the books down like on a table and just observe. I just sat there in the barbershop, trying not to look suspicious, just watching to see who would interact and how they would interact. And what I found was older kids, like, teenagers or adults, were much more likely to be on cell phones, much more likely to be watching TV, or just engaged in conversations in the barbershop. And whereas the younger kids were much more likely to pick up a book and read.
Yes.
And I think it was because many of the environments of the barbershops, and for the Barbershop Books program, our primary target communities are Black communities, because of the role that the barbershop plays in many Black communities. And so, our barbershops, the majority of them, really have predominantly Black or African American clientele. And so, when I found out, the little kids are the ones who are most likely to read in the barbershop. And at this time, I was spending my own money to buy books. So I said, well, by buying children's books, I get the most return on my investment.
Yes.
In terms of the most amount of reading will happen for every dollar I spend by focusing on children. And so it was that research and observations that led me to really kind of narrow the scope of our program focused to just, boys ages 8 and below.
Oh, okay. I'm glad you said that because I was wondering what's the age range that you
Yeah,
focus
I would say around 2 to 8.
on.
Children start coming to barbershops around age 2.
Yeah.
Uh, and then we kind of end around age 8 because of a lot of the research around, you know, if children are reading on grade level by the end of grade 3, they're much
Yeah.
more likely to graduate from high school. And so, Barbershop Books is really focusing on supporting children during those early years and cultivating their reading identity.
Yeah, yeah. That's very good. It's very good. So it's that critical age, that the literacy age right there to develop literacy.
And when most children are learning to read, many of them never have a male teacher.
Ah,
And even more rare, a black male teacher
yes.
during the grades when they're learning to read. But many black boys go to the barber shop. And so
Yeah.
we really, try and inspire black boys to
Mm-hmm.
identify as readers and to read for fun by connecting reading to a male-centered space and
Mm-hmm.
by involving black men in boys' early reading experiences.
Yeah. So you mentioned the the different books and the age group, 2 to 8 or so age group. Do you have a team that is responsible for choosing books or give recommendation? Who do you work with the team?
So our program team, it's always interacting with community members and our various community partners, whether it be libraries,
Okay.
schools,
Mhm.
parents, and we're always on the lookout, and for books that our target audience, which are black boys and other
Yeah.
boys of color, that they will find relevant. But we try and really collect as many recommendations as possible directly from children.
Hmm.
When I first, started curating the book list, I thought a lot about, well, what are the books that when I was a kindergarten teacher during free choice time, when they could be playing with blocks, with Play-Doh, they could be
Hmm.
painting. There were kids in the corner snickering,
Hmm.
reading No David, right? And there's this picture in
Yeah.
the book where he jumps out the toilet and
Yeah.
out the bathroom,
Yeah.
the bathtub, and he's running down the street naked, and the kids
Yeah.
would be sitting there snickering and laughing and giggling. And I'm like, listen, guys, you can't just read one page in the book. You gotta, but
Yeah.
I remember saying to myself, you know what? If I ever start that Barbershop Books program, I'm gonna make sure that this book is one of the books that's in there because it's a book that kids want to read for fun.
Yeah. They love it.
And
Yeah,
so we
I
try
know.
and get recommendations from kids, but there is a little bit of a tension between
Yeah.
what adults think little black boys should read and what black boys themselves
Yeah.
communicate that they would like to read.
Yeah, that's very good. I did some study on the brain, how it works between the two genders, boys and girls, in the early childhood development. Have you looked at that to see how students would differ, kids,
Yeah, I mean, I've taught,
Yeah.
a few different grades, kindergarten, first grade, fourth grade.
Hmm.
And, you know, I don't know what's politically correct now to say, but I
Yeah.
think there is definitely a difference between boys
Yeah.
and girls. I remember being in a fourth grade classroom.
Hmm.
Every single boy in the class, every single boy was doing this.
Oh,
And
wow.
all the girls were just looking at the boys like, boys are so stupid. Right? And I just remember sitting there observing this, being like,
Yeah.
there looks to be some kind of a difference. But the thing is that girls, uh, you know, across the board tend to have significantly higher levels of reading proficiency than
Yes.
boys
Yeah.
across all
Yep.
demographics,
Yep.
you know, and I guess people can investigate and argue why that is the case, but the reality is that it's the case. If you were to
Yeah.
choose, you know, uh, 10 boys and 10 girls, on average, those girls would be reading at a higher level
Yes.
than the boys would be. And I think that, sometimes people don't want to acknowledge, the fact that there are specific challenges that
Mm-hmm.
certain populations face. And I think that
Yep.
by not acknowledging some of those differences, it can make it more difficult to create targeted solutions to actually address those challenges. And so we do get the question all the time, what
Yeah.
about girls?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I look forward to getting a big check so that we can start beauty shop
Yeah.
books. I look
Yeah.
forward.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
look
Yeah.
forward to getting a big old check because guess
Yes.
what? If we're going to launch something for the girls,
Yeah.
that program deserves the same level of attention,
Mm-hmm.
intentionality
Mm-hmm.
that we've applied to barbershop books.
Yeah.
But I would say that, for now, we really are focused on the Black boys, and they're drowning.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
you think about
Yep.
triage,
Yep.
some kids can tread water, some kids have a lifesaver,
Mm-hmm.
and then other kids are just out here bloop, bloop, like,
Yep. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
our Black boys are really struggling,
Yeah.
and it's not, it's not their fault. It's
Yeah.
not,
True.
it's not their fault. It's
Yeah.
not their fault. And that's one of the things that we try and be very intentional about, is not blaming the boys.
Yeah.
So when you look at the problems or the challenges that we're trying to face, a
Mm-hmm.
lack of Black male reading role models,
Yep. Yeah.
right? A lack of culturally relevant books,
Mm-hmm.
environments that don't acknowledge or recognize or celebrate the full humanity
Yeah.
of Black
Yeah.
boys.
Or even the curriculum in school, it's girl
Exactly.
centered. It's girl centered.
Especially during those
Yeah.
early grades, a lot of
Yeah.
the books that get selected for read alouds, they
Mm-hmm.
do tend to be books that the teachers, which almost all women, that they consider to be quality children's literature.
Yeah.
And a
Yeah.
lot of the stuff that boys like is, it's not always the stuff that teachers would
Yeah.
choose to read,
Exactly.
you
So,
know.
yeah. Yeah. So that's for Barbershop Books. It's very interesting, and we're gonna share some details too on the website about Barbershop Books, as well as in the YouTube chat, in the description later on. Tell us for now, because now is the first week of July, and you have something coming up next week, the 11th of July. You're starting off the camp, the summer camp. Tell our viewers a little bit about that.
Sure.
Yeah.
So during the summer of 2020, when the barbershops closed down,
Yes.
and I honestly was like, oh my goodness, is this the end of barbershop books? The
Yeah.
barbershops are closed. And of course, after, moping around for a week or so, like everyone else, right? We were all caught up in, the craziness of the start of the pandemic. I put on my thinking cap and I said, well, what can barbershop books do during the summer when the summer camps are closed, there's no summer school, everything's crazy, to
Mm-hmm.
ensure that, Black boys and other boys of color had access to summer reading enrichment. And so Barbershop Books, we developed a 3-week summer reading program. And it's really a little different from a lot of the kind of skill-based reading interventions that a lot of children might encounter during the summer.
Yeah.
Our program really was designed to help children discover, explore, and articulate their reading preferences.
Mm-hmm.
And so this summer, beginning July 11th, the first week, boys will explore different reading spots, and they'll learn about different places where kids read. You can read inside, you can read outside, you can read sitting still or moving, like in a vehicle, a car,
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
subway car, a
Yeah.
train, a bus.
Mhm.
You and then looking at the characteristics of reading spots. Some reading spots are soft, some are hard, some are
Mhm.
bright, some are dim, some are quiet, like a
Yeah.
library, or some could be loud, like a park, right?
Mhm.
Helping children who may not have or who may have limited reading experiences outside of school to really understand these things that people who identify as readers and who read
Yeah.
for fun, they often already understand these things about themselves, the things
Yeah.
that they like as a reader. So week one is going to focus on reading spots. Week two is going to look at what do kids read, fiction and nonfiction genres. Uh, and then week three will focus on places to see and hear new words. And
Wow.
children will explore the different places and spaces in their everyday lives and
Mhm.
communities where they can see and hear new words. And so the students will have 2 weeks, I'm sorry, 2 1-hour lessons per week for
Okay.
3 weeks.
Mhm.
We've hired 9 high school boys of color who we will be training to serve as youth instructors. They're going to
Oh.
actually be facilitating
Mhm.
the lessons, and that really uh, is just based on feedback from what we did during the first summer back in 2020, where the
Yeah.
parents, we hired black male teachers, and the parents
Mhm.
said, my son has never had a black teacher before. And so, they many of the parents talked about how beneficial it was for the boys to have other boys of color to be able to discuss reading with and to have an instructor who looked
Yeah.
like them and who they could
Yeah.
relate to and identify with. And so we said, well, let's take it a step further and hire some high school students.
Yeah.
Let's train them. And because we're just talking about reading spots, we're talking about fiction and nonfiction genres, we're talking about places in the community,
Mhm.
it doesn't require them to be trained, certified teachers in order to facilitate these conversations and these
Yeah.
discussions.
So, yeah, that's very good. So it starts on July 11th. Is it 5 days per week for the 3 weeks?
It's actually only 2 days per week for
Oh.
3 weeks. So it's going to be 2 1-hour lessons per week
Mhm.
for 3 weeks. And no, our July session that starts on July the 11th is already full. So we already
Oh.
have 80 boys
Wow. Wow.
who will be participating, and they will each be broken into cohorts of 10 boys.
Okay.
So
Oh.
over those 3 weeks, each cohort will have one youth instructor, and those 10 boys will kind of go through each of the
Mhm.
6 lessons. But our summer session 2 starts on August 1st, and we do still have, the last I looked, it
Yeah.
was just over around 10 spots left.
Wow.
But
Wow.
this summer, we're
Mhm.
only making the program available to boys based in New York, unfortunately.
Oh, unfortunately, yeah.
But next
Yes.
summer, we
Yes.
are looking forward to opening it up and essentially making it available to pretty much parents anywhere who
Yeah.
would like their boys of color to participate. And I think in the same way in which we'll be opening up the we'll also probably open up the youth instructor positions
Yeah.
and the summer educator positions that we'll have available
Mhm.
to a much larger pool, a national or
Yeah.
possibly international audience
Yeah.
as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah. We can drive that with you as a partner of the international part too. So that's very good. Yeah. We do need it to reach because there's so many. When I think of it and I look at the Caribbean or in Europe or Africa, we have people there tuning in to our channel too. They need that sort of motivation and support. So
Oh, and just to give you an idea of
yeah.
what this program will include, so each lesson has a slide deck,
Yes.
and each student participant will receive 4 children's books in the mail
Wow.
and a 76-page activity book.
Yeah. Yeah.
So as they're going through and learning about different reading spots, they'll actually be able to do activities
Yes.
where they'll be able to kind of match and sort You know, which reading spots are inside, which ones are
Yeah.
outside, you know. So there are hands-on activities, school supplies, and children's books that each participant will receive
It's very
as a
good.
part of their participation.
Yeah.
And it's free. We
Yeah,
receive
yeah.
funding to make it available for
Yeah,
free.
that's very good. So the one that you're doing on the 11th, the summer reading, it's virtual?
It's virtual.
All
Yep.
of it is virtual. Okay. That's very good. So you can reach a lot of people that way. That's so good. As we're winding down, I want you to talk a little bit about next step for Barbershop Books. Where do you see it going? You know, because it's big now. It's big. But I'm sure as a person thinking and have a vision, you're looking at the next step.
I think that, you know, one, you know, we're looking to partner this coming year with, or we're currently exploring potential partnerships with several library systems across the country to, you know, expand the Barbershop Books program to support libraries in better engaging Black communities, as
Mhm.
well as increasing the amount of Black families who take advantage of the public library,
Yeah,
their
yeah.
local public libraries. And I don't think that a lot of people in the United States understand just how unique the public library system in the United States is.
Mhm.
Every city in every country, they don't just have libraries where you can just walk in and just start grabbing books and taking them home. Like, that's
Mhm.
not something. And so, it is such a tremendous resource. I think it's way underutilized in many
Yeah,
Black communities. And so
it's
I
true.
think Barbershop Books has a role that we can play in helping to facilitate that. Also, I think that our Reading So Lit summer program
Yeah,
has been, we've kind of built on that to create Reading So Lit Classroom, which is a
yeah,
much more kind of comprehensive kind of version of it that we've piloted in some schools.
yeah, yeah,
We've also created a mental health themed version of Reading So Lit that we've
yeah,
piloted in shelters. And so I really just think that, we're going to continue to develop our Reading So Lit content with
yeah,
the
yeah.
goal of potentially, supporting schools in better understanding the reading preferences of their students,
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
with the goal of curating early, helping educators to curate early literacy content
mhm.
and experiences in a way that's more relevant and engaging for
Yeah,
students.
yeah. Speaking of engagement too and relevant, have you over the years have you done any research in your own or evaluation in your own organization to see if those students who have become a part of Barbershop Books, have they increased their level of reading competency in schools?
So the research that we've done, that's a great
Yeah,
question,
yeah.
has really looked at how the Barbershop Books program impacts reading behavior in
Hmm.
barbershops.
Right.
And what we found is that before the Barbershop Books program, about 90% of barbers report rarely or never seeing boys read in the barbershop.
Mhm.
And after 6 months, around 82 or 83% of barbers report seeing boys read daily or almost every day. And
Mhm.
so essentially, in many of the barbershops, no reading is happening among the boys who come into those barbershops. But
Mhm.
after our program,
Yes.
boys are reading on a regular basis. Not every single boy, not
Wow.
every single second,
Hmm.
but there is definitely, research from us internally. And now that we have an independent researcher kind of evaluating our program, and she's, has seen some of these same types of outcomes in terms of
Yeah,
reading
yeah.
behavior.
Yeah, guys, please go to barbershopbooks.org. That's barbershopbooks.org, and you'll see the wonderful work that Alvin and his team are doing over there. Please check it out, and you can also check out on our website too, because I think we tag you on there on educationsolutionsinternational.org. You can go on there, and there's a link on there too for barbershopbooks.org. Check them out. They're doing wonderful things right across the nation for boys of color, Black boys and boys of color in general. So check it out. We're talking with the founder of Barbershop Books, and he's Alvin Irby. It's wonderful, wonderful initiative, and it's going from so many years now, almost, it's almost what, 9 years?
It'll be 10 years next year in
Yeah.
2023.
Oh,
10
geez.
year, 10-year
Yeah.
anniversary. Yeah, man.
Yeah. So thank you, Alvin. Thank you so much for coming on, and we're looking forward to greater partnership. I should remind everybody to, and you, speaking of books, that we're launching our reading show. It's called Reading with the Jays. And my little daughter, she's 9. She's gonna co-host the program too on Thursday, every Thursday night.
Oh, that's cool.
I'm gonna
That's
reach
cool.
out to you for some of those books to influence our people of color, not just boys, but people of color in general, because they need our support in general.
Wonderful. Well, I
Yeah,
look
what?
forward to it.
Yeah, what final word? I want to give you the final word in terms of a message that you want to leave with all our young people, and especially their parents, because we don't really
I
talk
would
about their parents.
say, I would say during the early years to focus on helping children identify as readers, because if they identify as a reader,
Mm-hmm.
then that means that they'll be intrinsically motivated. And whether they have a good teacher or a bad teacher, whether they're at a good school or a bad school, as long as they identify as a reader, they will read. But if they do not identify as a reader, if they view reading as something dictated by something external, whether that's an assignment, homework, a teacher, then I think it becomes much more difficult to develop a lifelong habit of reading. And to support that goal of helping inspire children to read, please go to barbershopbooks.org. Check
Yeah.
out the Barbershop Books e-library. We
Uh,
have almost 30 titles that are available for free, published by independent authors of color. If you're an author and
mhm.
you have written, and you're an independent author and you've written a children's book, please consider reaching out to us and seeing if your book might be a good fit for our e-library. It's available for free. Anyone who has access to the internet.
Yeah, yeah, very good, very good. Thank you so much. And looking forward to the whole entire partnership moving forward with you to promote all of that reading stuff. Thank you so much, Alvin. You made my evening really wonderful, because I love the initiative. I love it so much. Viewers, thank you also. And remember what Alvin just said, barbershopbooks.org. You can go on there and check out all of their resources. And a lot of it is free, it's totally free, that you can get resources to help you promote reading in your home or in your school. All right, and in your community as well, because it's a community-based organization. And thank you so much for coming on. Stay tuned for another EduTalk coming up next week, Tuesday. And also, we have events coming up this week as well. So you can go on our website and check it out, educationsolutionsinternational.org. All right, bye everybody. Take care. We're out of time as usual. Thank you, Alvin. All the best, everybody.
Thank you.
Yeah, take care.